So.
A little heat in here?
I'm sure I'm going to be cold.
We're back. Dina, would you like to summarize the agreement?
I'll do my best. Thanks, Deb. In executive session now, the school committee has approved the memorandum of agreement with the Triton Regional School District and the Triton Regional School District Public Employee Committee. This has jurisdiction over health insurance, and it has passed the Teachers Association and the IAs Association, which essentially means by majority it's approved. There was some changes in the plan design in co-payments, and we did look at, in our negotiations, we did look at other providers besides Blue Cross Blue Shield, which we have had in the past. However, due to Brian's hard work and diligence, Maya came back to the table with Blue Cross Blue Shield, and we are continuing with Blue Cross Blue Shield. This is a 3-year agreement, and I don't know if the superintendent or assistant superintendent want to add anything to that? Okay, so this is passed the school committee, not unanimously. There was one member who did not vote for this, and so this will be signed by the
People that need to sign it.
yes, exactly.
I think you were supposed to in public.
Oh, yes. Could we have a motion to approve the PEC agreement as negotiated by the Personnel and Negotiations Subcommittee?
So moved.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is our FY17 operating budget. To receive further information on the development of the FY17 operating budget, and to vote a final operating budget, and to approve a final FY17 operating budget for submission to the member towns.
I'm going to take you through this. I should say that the best way to get this done is to send the superintendent to England for a week, so that the assistant superintendent can get on with it and solve the problem. What we're doing now is taking you through the changes from the tentative operating budget to this iteration. And if I can take you through this on page 1, there's an introduction that you haven't seen. It really simply says that this presentation of the budget takes you through the evolution of the budget from the tentative budget, the adequate budget, the increase in costs required to maintain essential programs and services, and anticipated negative revenue changes, the cuts on page 13 that were agreed in the tentative budget, and then on page 14 and 15 takes you to the details of the changes which have been made to the tentative budget. We have included on page 1 the history of changes in town assessments in recent years, and you will see that the increase in the operating budget on the average since 2011 has been under 2%, and that the average increase in town assessments has been just over 2%. So when people talk about, well, education's costing a lot more, when you compare these figures with typical assumptions around COLA over time, I believe that the committee has been very judicious in terms of looking for savings while maintaining programs and services as far as we can. At the bottom of this page is information that was not included in the tentative, and it seeks in 4 lines to explain the variation in the town assessments. as a result of changes in enrollment, the state's intrusion into our affairs by seeking to get to a point where all districts have a 17.5% aid through Chapter 70, and then the Department of Revenue's calculations on the capacity of towns to pay based upon changes in mean incomes and property values. And so that there's a new part in here which I think I know that the committee is keen to keep working on some possible solution to this difficulty that we have as a region which is not there for towns. Through to page 14, the document is identical. If you go to page 14, you have there the medical insurance change, just over 113,000, which is essentially therefore about a 600,000 change from where we started when we were looking at the budget. And I do want to say, if I may, I certainly believe that the Public Employee Committee Association representatives came to the table in a very constructive frame of mind, looking to help solve issues. The discussions were rigorous, but they're also cordial, and I attach a lot of importance to that. If you go down one, we have a special education aging out that we weren't anticipating. You'll see there's a saving there of a little over 41,000. Next, a change in nursing staffing, which saves another $20,000. And we now come to the bit where I went to England and Brian was creative with his friends. I do want to say, when I say with his friends, people sometimes think that the budget is developed essentially by Brian and me. That is not true. It involves regular meetings with the principals where we say, what if, can you help, got any better ideas? And in some cases it's the chief academic officer talking to math specialists about, you know, how can we organize ourselves to maintain services as far as possible. When you look at elementary math specialists, we were going to cut 2. This budget reduces the personnel by 1.5. And so instead of, with a tweak at Pine Grove, giving up a 0.5 literacy specialist, we have a situation where Pine Grove will have a 0.5, and we'll have one math specialist working across Newbury and Salisbury. That's partly been achieved by rolling in the $20,000 that we talked about to beef up professional development in the absence of that math specialist support. If you go down to elementary library technology, we were looking to reduce by 3. This budget, which we're presenting to you, reduces by 2, and therefore maintains a capacity to have 1 technology specialist covering the elementary schools. We believe that is better than no support. We still have the 4 elementary school teacher position reductions, but you will see that there's a saving of nearly $30,000 there. That $30,000 represents the net saving from the early retirement incentive scheme. It represents 1 teacher who was already going to retire and therefore gets the $20,000 anyway. That is netted off the savings from 2 Pine Grove teachers who are taking the early retirement incentive. So that program keeps in place some younger teachers, avoids paying younger teachers to stay home while we pay them 36% of their salary in terms of an unemployment liability, and it's enabling some veteran teachers to retire. If you go to the middle school, we were talking about simply having essentially a 1 Spanish and 1 French teacher. What we have now is a situation where we know that we can retain 3 teachers, 2 of whom teach both French and Spanish, to maintain world languages as a core subject, but it will become detached from teams. Because one of them is going to be teaching 2 grade levels, it just isn't possible to have them as whole members of teams. But that does retain our commitment to world languages. I do want to say and recognise the administration of the middle school, Alan McRae and Liz Finn in particular, have worked with enormous tenacity and creativity trying to develop a budget that would align with the middle school. We knew that this was going to be extremely difficult because the high school schedule is a 7-day schedule and they drop one block each day, what they call their G block. The middle school doesn't have that block. The high school has got a range of electives that can take place in that block. The middle school doesn't. And we have tried very hard to align. We can't do it with the resources that we've got. If we really want them to align, either the middle school needs more resources, or we need to look at the high school and the middle school afresh and not try to align one with another, but create a unified schedule across the 2. So we have a schedule that will work next year on this basis. The other thing that we weren't expecting is that in looking at the middle school special education personnel, we are clear. Things can change in special education very quickly. We're clear at the moment that we can manage with 1 less teacher. We have a impending resignation in the high school, and so a middle school special education teacher we're expecting to be able to transfer into the high school, and that means we have a complete saving in terms of a salary and health insurance, which is why you get a figure of nearly 92,000. That is salary and health insurance. So we've pulled in total nearly 200,000 out of the budget, but in doing so we've managed to massage things in a way that puts some personnel back into critical areas. If you go to the next page and look at the top, we have there an increase in the general operating expense as compared with the final adjustment for this year of 1.71%, as against 2.24% in the tentative budget. If you then go down to look at the operating assessments, in place of 3.18%, which was the increase in the tentative, it's now 2.25%. And when that's interpreted town by town, Newbury, as you would expect, is reduced even further from minus 2.16 to minus 3.03. Rowley goes down from 6.54% increase to 5.57, and Salisbury goes down from 5.02 to 4.08. I think that's a good faith effort to respond to the concerns that the towns were voicing. Page 16 will just incorporate those figures in terms of Brian's detailed analysis of how he gets to the assessment. So I'm going to ask Brian, do you want to chip in? Is there anything that... Oh, actually there is. As part of the work that was being done while I was away, you'll recall that we were expecting a $20 per student increase in Chapter 78. This budget anticipates a 30 $30 per student aid. That's based upon discussions, particularly with Representative Hill, who came in and talked with us a little while, and the regional transport is up to 70% as against 65% assumption in the tentative. So we're taking a little bit of a flyer there, When you ask the question, well, what happens if that doesn't happen? In a budget this size, there are swings and roundabouts during the course of the year, and prior experience suggests that we will be able to cover that during the course of the year. So you have a final FY17 operating budget here of 38,472,253, and capital debt service expenses of 2,719,750, and that is what we are hoping that you're going to approve.
Thank you.
If you have questions, Brian will do his best to answer them.
We'll move the question and then see if there are any questions. Could we have a motion to approve an FY17 general operating budget of $38,472,253?
I'll make a motion to approve an FY17 general operating budget of $38,472,253.
Could we have a second on that motion?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion, any questions? Paul?
The budget as it is about your discussion about the scheduling. I'm totally confused, and I don't necessarily want to get into it right now, but between the high school and the middle school, I had asked earlier if we could just get briefed on that in some subsequent meeting.
I can do that now if you wish.
Okay.
The middle school budget remains a 5-day schedule. It's not aligned with the high school at all. The schedule provides for 7th and 8th grade science. It provides greater opportunities for special education teachers and specialists to provide more intensive support for students who are struggling, particularly in literacy.
And so was the team...
And the teams remain in place.
They do remain in place.
They remain in place, but as I mentioned, the world language teachers will not be full members of those teams because they can't.
And that's the way it's going to be for next year.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much.
Before you move on, I hope I've said enough for you to understand that Brian has done a tremendous job putting this together.
Yes.
Can I just add one thing to that?
Yes.
I think you're very gracious in giving him credit, Christopher, but I don't want you to be overlooked either. You definitely influence this as well. I mean, I know Brian does a lion's share of the work, but I don't want you to underscore your contribution as well.
My job is conductor, he's first chair violin.
Okay. Could we have a motion to approve capital expenses for FY17 of $2,719,750?
I'll make a motion to approve capital expenses for FY17 at $2,719,750.
Could we have a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion on that? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is stadium redevelopment, to receive a briefing on financing arrangements and to award the contracts for the redevelopment of the stadium.
Okay. So you have two papers in front of you. You have a paper that looks very similar to last week. It was a summary, and then you have some language for a motion. So since last week, not a ton has changed. We've continued to do our due diligence, working with Gale Associates. We have draft intent to award contract letters to both David White and Sons for the field work and GTC for the amenities building. We've continued to vet them and make sure they are the right contractors for the job, and we believe they are. We've continued to work with First Southwest in regards to the bonding. We, again, are now on a 15-year schedule. It will actually be payable over 20 years, but it's the bulk of the stadium is paid off in 15 years, and the final 5 years of the payments go down to $75,000. I mean, I have information if you want to look through actual bond schedules and such. The majority of our time we've spent with First Southwest looking at a schedule to ensure that if you agree and award the contract tonight, We have a tentative scheduled meeting with both general contractors to put them into the same room to make sure they're going to play nice for the next 4 months together out there. To kick that off and be ready to start construction 1 week from Monday on April 11th. Obviously, to start construction, we have to have money in the bank, so we're working with First Southwest, and we have a schedule that would bring, you have to vote and sign the award for bond anticipation notes. So again, a bond anticipation note is a ban. We borrow short-term money for the duration of the project. We borrow as much as we need. We then bond only what we need. If we can do the project without the contingency, we only have to bond 3.1. If we need that contingency, we bond 3.2 and therefore. So we have a plan that will get that information out on the street, sale of the bonds or the bands by the 7th of April, bring back at our April 13th meeting a vote that would have the $3.2 million in our bank account for the start of the following week. Working with our current treasurer, and we've also established in some of the language on the vote as far as we've got language to award the due contracts, but there's also a recommendation to establish a capital projects fund. So think of that similar to a revolving account. You get a report every month from through the finance subcommittee, and it reports on the school choice revolving and the preschool tuition revolving account. Those are long-standing statutory accounts that you voted to establish. Money goes in and out. It's generally when you're charging fees. A capital projects fund functions the exact same way, but you vote to establish it for a purpose. So you vote to establish it tonight for the purpose and duration of this capital project and the stadium renovation. When the money is gone, when we're done, when it's bonded and the project is signed off on, we close that account. We'll have a separate account in a physical bank account for the institution for savings, both at the institution for savings, because that's where our accounts are, both for their donation as well as TES donation as well as the band proceeds, so that we can track all of that separately, and obviously any payments in regards to the bond, or I'm sorry, in regards to the stadium project are tracked for those on the finance subcommittee. They're signing those on separate warrants. Those are not going to be commingled with any general operating expenditures. So every dime spent is tracked and kept completely separate. So the only other, everything else on this sheet pretty much mimics what we talked about last week in regards to the overall finances. The final outstanding question last week is a good report this week. We do not have it officially in writing, but we've been talking all along in regards to an outstanding potential issue with our wastewater treatment plant. Based on a conversation that I had the beginning of this week, I believe that we are in the clear. Her words were, "I don't see any reason why there would be anything other than a normal approval and an order of conditions," which is what DEP will order us to say. The project is approved. Here are the conditions that need to be met, a certain schedule for monitoring and so forth. So we don't have that in writing yet, but I'm confident, based on my conversations, that the mood changed very drastically in regards to the discussion. So I'm very hopeful that that is going to be a complete non-issue. And then I think everything else stays exactly the same as it had been discussed. We'll continue again in the only change in the bond schedule. And again, this is months off. So again, we ban short term and then we bond when we're all done. I've kept in contact with Neil Harrington as he had asked the question about bond premiums, Mr. Lees, and these are issuing bond premiums, and those are factored into the cost, and was able to get information to Neil about the assumptions on the interest rates, because again, the way a bond happens is we make all these predictions and then they sell the bonds, and so obviously it will change based on those who bid on those bonds. So all the projections are the same. We actually have a scenario here where I think we don't have any payment due until 2018, our fiscal 18, I should say, which is when we met with the DCC last week, that was the hope that we can continue to keep that schedule where nothing is due in fiscal 17, since you just approved final figures and rather changing those late in the game. But other than that, it stays, pretty much stands where it was last week. I'm certainly ready to recommend tonight that you, according to that language, that you award the general field contract to David White and Sons out of Bow, New Hampshire, and to GTC Construction out of Haverhill, Massachusetts, for the amenities building project.
I shall read the motion and then ask for questions. Could we have a motion to award a fieldwork contract and authorize the Assistant Superintendent to execute said contract following review by District Council, subject to the provisions of Mass General Laws C-30S-39M, for the renovation of the Triton Athletic Stadium to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder based upon the bid opening on Friday, March 11th, 2016, to David White and Sons out of Bow, New Hampshire. Said award will include the base bid and deduct an alternate number 1 at a total value of $2,735,500.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion on that motion?
Can I just make one clarification, just in regards to, I'm waiting for the discussion about when do we make the choices about that pad. This was bid with Crumb Rubber. All those decisions start with the stadium building committee that's been meeting all along. That could be the same group, different group, whatever it is. We start to meet, and those decisions are made from this point forward with the contractor at the table. So,
All those in favor of this motion? Unanimous, thank you. Could we have a motion to award a building construction contract and authorize the Assistant Superintendent to execute said contract following review by District Council, subject to the provisions of Mass General Law C-149 for the construction of an amenities building in conjunction with the renovation of Triton Athletic Stadium to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, based upon bid opening on Friday, March 11th, 2016, to GTC Construction out of Haverhill, Massachusetts, at a total value of $1,019,185.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or questions on that motion? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Third motion, could we motion to establish a capital projects fund for the duration of the Triton Stadium renovation project to receive all revenues from band proceeds and donations, and from which all stadium project expenditures shall be made. All expenditures from the capital projects fund shall be made by the warrant process and shall be recorded on separate warrants from general operating budget payments.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions and discussions on that? Paul?
Brian, I'm just wondering, I know that you said separate, and I missed the meeting where we had the accountant's report and the OPEB funds, which were not separate. So my question is, are the OPEB funds now separate?
they're in the process of becoming.
Okay.
Yes.
And we're not going to get a report next year from the CPAs that says we did something wrong with this bond thing?
We will not.
Okay. Have we reached out to them to say, hey, we're getting into a bond situation? Is there anything that we need to do according to them, or are we just working off
auditors?
of what we know?
Our auditors?
Yes.
I mean, we've received other counsel, yes. I haven't spoken directly to our auditors, no.
Okay.
I can review that with them if you'd like.
Well, no, I'm just asking, is that something that people do when they're entering into a bond situation, that if we haven't done this a lot, rather than getting bad news a year from now?
I've spoken to 3 of the districts that have gone through this process.
Okay.
I will speak with our auditor. That will
Okay.
make you more-
And so I just want to get back to the OPEB thing, because I missed that. I had to go to a funeral that night. But, so when you say we're in the process of doing it, what does that mean?
Literally, we have to establish another account to put that $10,000 in.
Okay, and what's the timeline on that?
I don't have an exact time on it. I can let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on this motion? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you very much.
Could I interject my personal thanks to all the people who stuck with this project over 5 years. I know Dina in particular has seen it as she's been mother hen to this egg, and Brian, of course, dealing with the detail. It's a culmination of a lot of hard work.
The next item on our agenda is to appoint the Pine Grove School Building Committee representatives. We need to formally charge the Pine Grove School Council and PTO with nominating parent and teacher representation to the Pine Grove School Building Committee. Could we have a motion to do that, please?
I'll make a motion.
Could we have a second?
Second?
Are there any questions or discussion around the appointment of a parent and teacher representation to the Pine Grove Building Committee? No? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Next item on the agenda is a new superintendent induction program that is offered by the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents, and I believe this is a fairly new program. Is that correct?
It's been running for a few years. It's funded by the state, and the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents is the delivery mechanism for this program. I'm not sure technically this needs to be here, but Brian wanted it to be here. Essentially, this is an opportunity to invest in your investment. When I arrived in Coventry in 1987 from Sheffield, I knew nobody really, didn't know the city, and, you know, was thrown in the deep end. Brian has the advantage of knowing where all the bodies are buried in the district. Nonetheless, moving from assistant superintendent to superintendent is a significant step. What this offers to a new superintendent is certainly some coursework, certainly the opportunity to network with other new superintendents, and that is very valuable indeed. The superintendency can be a very lonely position with the more problematic issues that come up, and having some peers who you've got to know well and trust to be able to talk with them is important. I think another advantage is that we all benefit from opportunities to reflect on our professional practice. We get very busy doing the day-to-day. The opportunity to come out of that and discuss with other people who are working in the same way is a way. Partly it may confirm that one's own practice is okay, or it may confirm that maybe there's some other ideas that may be adopted and introduced into the district. I know some of the people who provide the mentoring services, that they are very distinguished practitioners in their own right. Certainly people that I greatly respect in terms of what they've done in whether it's Malden or Tewkesbury or elsewhere. So I would encourage you not to debate very long on this, but to say yes, this is a good idea.
When we were doing the agenda for this meeting, Brian asked me if I thought this should be on the agenda, because Christopher's correct, it doesn't have to be on the agenda, but I think we both thought that it would be something that was good for you to know that he's doing. It's something that's available, and I would like to know if it doesn't require a motion from us, but I would like to know if anybody has any questions or any comments about it. Linda?
Mr. Farmer, you said that the state was paying it. It says in here the cost to your new district for your participation in your first year in the program will be $4,500.
Yeah, yes, well, I should have said that the state is sponsoring it. They are putting funds into it, particularly into the development of the program. But that, yes, there is a cost for participation.
That is the cost, yes. And as you, I don't know if you see it on the agenda item, but it's a 3-year commitment. It's more heavy in the first year, and then there are kind of updates along the way. Brian, do you have any?
No, I mean, I can't say I know a whole lot about it. Obviously, they've approached me and have encouraged me to participate, and they believe that a district should commit to making sure their superintendent is part of this program. I believe last year they said 29 of 30 new superintendents were part of this program, and I believe they also pointed out that the 30th superintendent is no longer a superintendent. And then I believe everyone that they've approached this year, I forget the exact number, but they said that everyone is participating. So it's certainly, I think it would be a huge value. I would certainly provide a lot of experience for me and a lot of networking, as Christopher said. My understanding is it's a lot of work. So it's certainly, I look forward to it, but it's also, I think that there are significant outcomes in regards to driving and guiding through a process of a strategic plan, through an entry plan. So I think there are significant values for sure.
Paul?
I have to ask the other question. I know there's a $4,500 charge to the district. Is this going to cost us more, Brian, with your contract in the future?
Oh,
They're
because
gonna
he's going
cost
to be
more?
worth more?
This is not a credential that I can say, hey,
Renegotiate
I'm
your
an
contract in
ASP.
3 months when you start this.
You will-
Because now, I'm a first-year member of the NSIP.
I can speak confidently, you will never hear that acronym again used in regards to my contract.
Okay, thank you.
Any other
But thanks for bringing
questions?
that up.
Any other questions? All those that support Brian going to the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. Here we go. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, folks, you have another Wednesday off. Next Wednesday. Cherish it. Okay. Our next regular meeting is April 13th, and I would like to, before we officially close, to really thank everybody in the district, the central office administration, and all the building administrators for the number of hours that they spent trying to work out a budget that did the best we could for our students with the resources that we have. So thank you very much. Could we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you very much. Have a good night.